Psalm 69 is a complex and emotionally charged psalm attributed to David. Here's an analysis of its key elements. Structure. 1 verses 1 to 4. A cry for help. The psalmist describes being overwhelmed by troubles, comparing his situation to being in deep waters and sinking in the mire. He feels abandoned and persecuted by numerous enemies without cause. 2 verses 5 to 12. Confession and shame. David acknowledges his sins but emphasizes that his suffering is disproportionate. He describes the public scorn and mockery he endures, even from those who sit in the gate and drink in the city. 3 verses 13 to 18. Plea for deliverance. The psalmist turns to God, asking for rescue based on God's steadfast love and mercy. He pleads for God to answer him quickly as his suffering is acute. 4 verses 19 to 21. Describing the depth of suffering. David recounts the reproach and insults he faces, feeling heartbroken and in despair. His suffering is intensified by the lack of compassion and the cruel actions of others. 5 verses 22 to 28. Imprecations against enemies. The tone shifts to imprecations, where David calls for justice against his enemies. He asks for their tables to become a snare and for their eyes to be darkened, showing a desire for their punishment. 6 verses 29 to 36. Hope and praise. Despite his anguish, David expresses hope in God's salvation. He vows to praise God's name with song and thanksgiving, confident that God will hear the needy and not despise his people. The psalm concludes with a call for all creation to praise God, highlighting his support for Zion and his commitment to rebuilding the cities of Judah. Themes. Suffering and persecution. The psalmist vividly describes personal suffering, both physical and emotional, inflicted by enemies. Plea for divine intervention. There is a strong appeal to God's mercy and love for deliverance. Justice and retribution. David's imprecations against his enemies reveal a desire for divine justice. Faith and hope. Despite his plight, the psalmist maintains faith in God's ultimate deliverance and justice. New Testament connections. Psalm 69 is often cited in the New Testament. John 2 verse 17 and Romans 15 verse 3 refer to verse 9. Zeal for your house consumes me, applied to Jesus. John 15 verse 25 references verse 4 regarding being hated without cause. Matthew 27 verse 34 and John 19 verse 29 link verse 21. They gave me vinegar for my thirst, to Jesus' crucifixion. Conclusion. Psalm 69 is a powerful lament that encompasses deep sorrow, pleas for mercy, and a fervent hope in God's salvation. It reflects the human experience of suffering and the struggle for faith amidst adversity, while also serving as a prophetic foreshadowing of Christ's own sufferings.